Tonight, let's travel to Russia with one of the darkest, most haunting novels ever written. Find a comfortable position and let yourself drift. No pressure to follow every detail or remember every name. If you drift off, that's perfect. The story will carry you gently through the night. This is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a story about a young man who asks a terrible question: can murder ever be justified? St. Petersburg, 1865, July. A former student named Raskolnikov lives in a coffin-like room, planning something unthinkable in the sweltering summer heat. What happens when brilliant ideas curdle into something monstrous? When poverty and pride combine into murder? And is redemption possible after the worst? Picture St. Petersburg in summer. Dust everywhere, heat shimmering off cobblestones, the stench of poverty rising from the canals, and cramped tenement courtyards around the Haymarket. The Haymarket district, where the desperate gather, drunks and prostitutes, students and servants, all pressed together in the suffocating maze of narrow streets and alleys. Here lives Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov, 23 years old, once a promising law student. Now withdrawn from university, hiding from his landlady, barely eating. His room under the roof is barely 6 paces long, yellow wallpaper peeling from the walls. A narrow bed, a rickety table. It feels less like a room, more like a coffin. He has pawned everything he owns: his father's watch, his textbooks, even his good coat. He owes months of rent and creeps past the landlady's door like a thief. Something has been growing in his feverish mind for weeks. A theory that extraordinary men, like Napoleon, stand above ordinary moral laws. They have the right to transgress. And there is a certain old woman, a pawnbroker named Alyona Ivanovna. She lives just 730 steps from his building. He has counted them carefully. She exploits the desperate, this pawnbroker. Gives a few kopecks for precious objects. Charges ruinous interest. She is a louse, Raskolnikov thinks, sucking blood from the poor. He has visited her before, pawning his last possessions, each time studying the apartment, the locks on the doors. When her half-sister Lizaveta is away, a plams. Then a letter arrives from his mother in the provinces. His heart sinks as he reads. His sister Donya has been working as a governess for a wealthy family. A man named Luzhin wants to marry Donya. He is older, calculating, not wealthy but comfortable. He wants a wife who will be grateful, beholden, under his control forever. His mother writes hopefully, but Raskolnikov sees the truth. Donya is sacrificing herself for him, selling herself to this petty tyrant so her brother can finish his education. That evening he wanders into a tavern, slumps at a dirty table. A ruined man approaches him, reeking of vodka, eyes desperate and strangely hopeful. He wants to confess. Marmeladov was once a minor government official. He had position, dignity, a family. Then drink took everything. He lost his job, his self-respect, his wife's health to consumption. And his daughter Sonia, 18 years old. To feed her starving stepbrothers and sisters, she has become a prostitute. She takes the yellow ticket and sells her body. She brings home her earnings and places them silently on the table. 30 kopecks. Her stepmother Katerina Ivanovna says nothing. The children eat. The sacrifice continues each night. Raskolnikov walks Marmeladov home through the dark streets. He sees the miserable room, the dying wife coughing blood, the frightened children huddled in corners, absolute poverty revealed. Before leaving, he empties his pockets. His last coins from pawning. He leaves them all on the windowsill. His own compassion surprises him. He didn't know he still had it. Walking home through the summer night, the white northern sky never quite darkening, he feels his plan crystallizing into certainty. Tomorrow. The pawnbroker, the axe, it must happen. 730 steps away, an old woman sleeps, not knowing her final day has been chosen. The city holds its breath. Something terrible is about to begin. The morning arrives heavy and hot. Raskolnikov wakes from troubled sleep, his sheets damp with sweat. His mind still churning through fragments of nightmare and resolve. In his dream, he was a child again, walking with his father through the village. They passed a tavern where peasants gathered around a cart, drinking, shouting at something. A thin old mare was harnessed to an impossible load. The drunken owner beat her with a whip, demanding she pull. The horse's legs buckled. The blows continued falling. Little Radia broke free from his father and ran to the dying horse. He threw his arms around her bloodied muzzle, weeping. He woke from this dream trembling with horror. Can he really do what he has planned? He forces the doubt away, wraps a small wooden pledge in paper, fashions a loop inside his coat to hold the axe. Walking through the streets toward her building, everything seems unreal. The summer heat ripples the air. Faces pass like phantoms. His own body moves without his will directing it. Up the dark staircase, past closed doors behind which ordinary lives continue, his footsteps echo on worn stone. 4th floor. Her door stands before him, waiting patient. His hand rises to knock. Once, twice. His heart pounds so loudly he fears she will hear it through the door. Footsteps shuffle inside. The chain rattles. Alyona Ivanovna opens the door a crack, peering through the chain with her sharp little eyes. She recognizes the young man who has pawned things before. Suspicion wars with greed. Inside her cluttered rooms, she turns her back to examine his pledge by the window's light. The axe is in his hand now. He cannot feel it. Time stretches into forever. The first blow catches her on the crown of the head. She cries out weakly, falls to her knees. He strikes again, and again, until she is still and silent. What has he done? Blood pools on the floorboards. Her eyes stare at nothing. The room that held a living person moments ago now holds only a corpse. And him. Frantically he searches. Her keys. The trunk under the bed. Coins, trinkets, pledges wrapped in paper. He stuffs things into his pockets, hands shaking, smearing blood on everything. Footsteps. A key turning in the lock. Lizaveta, the pawnbroker's half-sister, stands frozen in the doorway. Simple, innocent. Gentle Lizaveta, she sees everything. She doesn't scream or run. She simply raises her hands like a child warding off a blow. The axe falls again. Now 2 bodies lie in the blood-soaked room. Voices on the stairs. Footsteps ascending. Someone is coming to visit the pawnbroker. Raskolnikov stands paralyzed, trapped in a locked apartment with 2 corpses and blood on his hands. The visitors call out. Knock again harder. They try the door. It's latched from inside. They grow suspicious, arguing about whether to fetch the porter, the police. Miracle, they leave, going for help. In the gap of their absence, Raskolnikov slips out, down the stairs, pressing himself into shadows as new visitors pass going up. He escapes. Back in his garret, he hides the stolen things under a loose floorboard. Falls onto his bed without undressing. Fever takes him. The world dissolves into delirium for days. Someone is taking care of him. A familiar voice. Razumikin, his old university friend, loyal and bewildered. He found Raskolnikov by chance and won't leave him to die alone. Dmitry Razumikin, everything Raskolnikov is not. Big, ruddy, cheerful despite his own poverty. He believes the best of everyone, especially his brilliant troubled friend, whom he deeply admires. Days pass, the fever breaks. Raskolnikov wakes to find a police summons waiting. Terror seizes him. But it's only about his unpaid rent, nothing more. Not yet. At the police station, waiting in a crowded office, he overhears officers discussing the murders. The pawnbroker and her sister. No suspects yet. The investigation continues. His crime is real. The heat, the smell, the noise, and their words about the murders overwhelm him. He faints dead away on the station floor. When he wakes, all eyes are watching him. They help him up. Offer water, ask if he's ill. He mumbles about fever, about not eating. But he sees the curious glances following him as he leaves. Seeds are planted. Razumikin brings news. There's an investigator named Porfiry Petrovich looking into the murders. He's also a distant relation of Razumikin's. Would Raskolnikov like to meet him? Of course he would. Porfiry Petrovich, round and rumpled, a friendly face with small, terribly intelligent eyes. He greets Raskolnikov like an old friend, all warmth and curiosity. The trap has soft edges. Such interesting conversation, Porfiry has read an article Raskolnikov published months ago about crime and extraordinary men. He wants to discuss the theory. Just intellectual curiosity, nothing more. The article argues that humanity divides into ordinary people and extraordinary ones. The ordinary must obey laws. The extraordinary have the right, even the duty, to transgress when necessary for higher purposes. Napoleon, for instance. He stepped over bodies by the thousands to achieve his destiny. He didn't ask permission. Great men make their own morality, so argues the young author. Porfiry smiles. Fascinating theory, but how does one know if one is extraordinary or merely ordinary? What if someone mistakes themselves, commits a crime believing themselves Napoleon, but is simply a criminal? Raskolnikov answers carefully. Too carefully. Porfiry has no evidence. Just instinct, pattern recognition, years of reading guilty men. But the game has begun, and he will not let go. Walking home, Raskolnikov feels a strange elation. He was clever. He revealed nothing. This investigator is no match for an extraordinary mind. Pride swells where fear should live. News from Razumikin, Raskolnikov's mother and sister, have arrived in Petersburg. They've taken modest lodgings nearby. They're anxious to see him. His heart splits between love and dread. Pulcheria Alexandrovna, his mother. 43 years of worry have lined her face. She rushes to embrace her son, weeping, not seeing how thin he has become, how haunted his eyes. Donia is different. She sees more clearly. Her brother has always been difficult, intense, but something new haunts him now. Something he won't name. She watches him with worried vigilance. Then Luzhin arrives to meet his future brother-in-law, immaculately dressed in his provincial way. Pompous, condescending. He speaks of Donia as a possession he is generously acquiring. Raskolnikov attacks, verbally, viciously. How dare this clerk think himself worthy of Donia? She is sacrificing herself for nothing, for no one, for this small-souled creature. The engagement must end. Chaos follows. Luzhin leaves insulted. Mother weeps. Donia is torn. She doesn't love Luzhin, but what other path exists? Her brother offers fury without solutions. The family fractures. Days later, a new figure enters the story. Svidrigailov, the wealthy landowner who employed Donia as governess. The one whose pursuit forced her to leave. He appears at Raskolnikov's door. Svidrigailov explains himself casually. Yes, he pursued Donia. His wife discovered and publicly shamed her. Then his wife died suddenly, mysteriously. People whisper about poison. He doesn't deny it convincingly. Something about Raskolnikov interests Svidrigailov. A recognition, one damaged soul sensing another. He speaks of strange things, ghosts, dreams, the meaninglessness of life. They are more alike than different, perhaps. Svidrigailov offers money. 10,000 rubles for Donia, to free her from needing to marry Luzhin. A gift, he claims. No strings. But from such a man, what gift is clean? Raskolnikov is drawn elsewhere. To a poor room in another tenement. To the girl whose father confessed his shame in the tavern. To Sonia. He needs to see her again. Sonia's room surprises him. Large but oddly shaped, irregular angles making it hard to rent. 3 windows, sparse furnishings, but clean and strangely peaceful. Her Bible sits on the small table. He asks her to read to him. The story of Lazarus, the man who died and was buried 4 days before Jesus called him back to life. Sonia's hands tremble on the pages. Her voice shakes as she reads. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. The words fill the small room. Can the dead really rise? Can anyone be reborn? Something passes between them. 2 outcasts recognizing each other. She has sold her body. He has murdered. Both have crossed into territories from which return seems impossible. But she believes otherwise. Neither knows that Svidrigailov has taken the room next door. That he presses his ear to the thin wall, listening to everything. The confession that almost happens. The faith that trembles. News comes that Marmeladov is dead. The drunken father, crushed by a carriage in the street. His ruined body carried home to die in his wife's arms before their terrified children. Raskolnikov pushes through the crowd, takes charge, helps carry the dying man upstairs, his own hands pressing cloths to wounds. his voice calling for a doctor who comes too late. Katerina Ivanovna screams accusations at her dying husband, then collapses in coughing fits, blood speckling her lips. Consumption is eating her alive too. This family is dying in pieces. Before leaving, Raskolnikov empties his pockets again. All the money Razumikin had given him for recovery. Every kopeck left for the funeral. His hands give while his conscience writhes with knowing. A few days later, another summons from Porfiry Petrovitch. Another friendly conversation in the cramped office. The cat plays with the mouse again, more openly now, claws extending from velvet paws. Porfiry speaks of psychology. How murderers often return to the scene of crime. How guilt drives them to confess in 1,000 small ways. He watches Raskolnikov's face for each flinch. Then a surprise. A painter named Nikolai bursts in and confesses to the murders himself. He saw the bodies, felt guilty somehow, convinced himself he did it. False confession, but useful distraction. Porfiry dismisses the confession with a wave. This boy is innocent. Just a troubled soul drawn to punishment. The real murderer is still out there. Still sitting in this very room, perhaps. The following days blur into paranoid wandering. Every face on the street seems to be watching him. Every policeman might be following. Raskolnikov walks and walks, unable to rest or think clearly. A stranger approaches on the street, leans close, whispers a single word, murderer, then walks away without looking back. Was he real? Did that really happen? Raskolnikov's grip on sanity loosens. He chases the man down the street, grabs his arm, demands explanation. The stranger simply looks at him with cold contempt. Murderer, he says again. Then shakes free and disappears into the crowd. That night, Raskolnikov returns to the pawnbroker's building. He doesn't know why. His feet simply carry him there. He climbs the dark stairs. Stands before the door where he killed. Workmen are inside now, renovating. Raskolnikov walks in and watches them tear down the old wallpaper. He pulls the doorbell, listening to it ring. The workers think him mad. Did much blood flow here? He asks them. They stare at him. He nearly tells them everything. This is where I killed her, right here, just so, but catches himself at the edge. He flees back down the stairs out into the night, leaning against a cold wall to catch his breath. So close. So terrifyingly close to ending everything with simple words. Meanwhile, love grows in unexpected places. Razumikin has fallen for Donya. Her intelligence, her courage, her fierce protection of her impossible brother. He adores her without any hope of return. Donya breaks her engagement to Luzhin. She refuses to be purchased, refuses to trade herself for security. Her mother weeps with worry, but Donya stands firm. She would rather risk poverty with dignity. Luzhin's revenge is petty and vicious. At a public memorial gathering for Marmeladov, he accuses Sonia of theft. Claims she stole 100-ruble note from his pocket right before everyone. Sonia is searched. The money is found in her pocket. Luzhin planted it himself. The room erupts. A prostitute and a thief! The crowd's judgment falls swift and merciless on the trembling girl. But a witness saw everything. Luzhin dropping the note into Sonia's pocket while pretending to help her. The truth comes out. The accuser becomes the accused. Luzhin stands exposed as the fraud he is. Luzhin flees in disgrace. Sonia is exonerated. But the damage to her spirit is done, another wound on top of so many. She returns home shaking, Raskolnikov silently following. Katerina Ivanovna's mind has finally broken. Her husband dead, her family shamed. Consumption eating her lungs. She laughs and weeps and plans an impossible funeral feast to show her worth. She invites everyone. The landlady, the neighbors, anyone who ever looked down on her. Most don't come. Those who do quickly leave. Her pride has become her final torture. The landlady demands she leave. Scenes and curses follow. Katerina Ivanovna, coughing blood, grabs her children and storms into the street. If no one respects her here, she'll take her dignity elsewhere. She forces the children to perform on the street. To sing, to beg, to dance for kopecks. Her eldest daughter Polenka weeps but obeys. A crowd gathers to stare at this spectacle of ruin. She collapses on the cobblestones. Blood pours from her lungs now, unstoppable. The crowd parts in horror. Sonia pushes through to gather her stepmother in her arms as the hemorrhage takes everything. There is no time for prayers or final words. Katerina Ivanovna dies in the street, where she was born to poverty, married into worse, and never escape. Only Sonia's tears mark her passing. Svidrigailov appears from nowhere. He offers to pay for the children's care, an orphanage, education, everything. His money comes with no visible strings. But what does this ghost-seeing libertine truly want? The children are taken to a respectable institution. The funeral is paid for. Svidrigailov has done a genuinely good deed. Yet something in his pale eyes suggests this is merely prologue to darker purposes. Porfiry summons Raskolnikov again. This time there's no pretense of casual conversation. The investigator speaks directly, softly, like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis with practiced compassion. "I know you killed them," Porfiry says simply. "I have no evidence that would stand in court. But I know." He waits for the denial that doesn't come convincingly. "You need air, my friend," Porfiry continues. "The air that comes from confession, from taking responsibility, from suffering the punishment and finding whatever waits on the other side of it. Give yourself up. Confess. It will reduce your sentence. But more importantly, it will save your soul. Suffering is a great thing, Rodion Romanovich. Don't run from it. Embrace it." Raskolnikov refuses. His extraordinary theory demands he stand above such ordinary endings. He will not grovel. He will not confess. He leaves Porfiry's office with his head high and his soul in agony. Porfiry doesn't arrest him. "I'll give you 2 days," he says to the retreating back. "Think about what I've said, then decide. I will be here when you're ready." Svidrigailov finds Raskolnikov that evening, pulls him into a tavern, wants to talk. About what exactly? About himself, about his past, about the ghosts that visit him at night. He speaks of a servant he once beat. The man hanged himself. Of a deaf-mute girl who drowned. They say Svidrigailov violated her. His voice remains light, as if discussing the weather. And his wife Marfa. She appears to him sometimes at night, sits by his bed. They have little conversations. She doesn't seem angry about the poison. Just disappointed, perhaps, in how things ended. "We are alike, you and I," Svidrigailov tells Raskolnikov. "Both have crossed lines. Both live with ghosts of their own making. The difference is Svidrigailov has stopped pretending it matters. But Svidrigailov has no Sonia. No faith to reach toward. No one to read him the story of Lazarus rising from the dead. His world is sealed and airless and empty of hope. His final obsession fixes on Donia. He lures her to his rented room with a promise to reveal everything about her brother's crime. She comes alone, trusting his information if not him. The door locks behind her. Svidrigailov reveals what he overheard through the wall. Raskolnikov's near confession to Sonia. Her brother is a murderer. Now she understands, and now she cannot leave. She pulls a revolver from her bag. She came prepared for anything. Points it at his chest with steady hands. "Open the door," she commands. He doesn't move. He almost smiles. "Shoot," he says. "Please. It would be a kindness." She fires. The bullet grazes his scalp. He begs her to shoot again, to aim better. He wants her to kill him. She can't. She throws the gun down in revulsion and runs. He lets her go. The one person who might have saved him, who might have given meaning to his empty existence. Gone forever. He picks up the gun. There is one bullet left. He knows already how this night will end. But not yet. Not quite yet. He has a few more hours of darkness to wander. Svidrigailov wanders through the rainy Petersburg night. Past taverns still glowing with desperate life. Past shuttered shops. Past sleeping doorways where the homeless curl against the cold damp. He enters a grimy hotel near the river. Takes a tiny room with water, stained walls, and a window facing a blank brick wall. This will be the last room he ever rents. Sleep won't come. Every time he closes his eyes, the ghosts gather. His wife Marfa, the hanged servant, the drowned girl. They wait at the edges of his consciousness, patient and eternal. A nightmare breaks through anyway. He finds himself in a grand house, searching room after room. In a corner, surrounded by flowers, lies a young girl, too young, too knowing, too corrupted. Her eyes open. She looks at him with ancient accusation in a child's face. He screams himself awake. The hotel room is unchanged. The rain still falls. The revolver still waits. Dawn breaks gray and cold over the Neva. Svidrigailov rises, dresses carefully in his finest clothes. The rain has stopped. A chill fog hangs over the city, muffling every sound. He walks to a watchtower where a Jewish fireman stands guard. The man looks at this elegant stranger with curiosity. What brings a gentleman here at such an hour? I'm going to America, Svidrigailov tells him with a strange smile. Before the watchman can respond, the revolver rises to Svidrigailov's temple. His finger finds the trigger without hesitation. The shot echoes across the empty morning. Svidrigailov crumples. The fireman shouts for help that comes too late. One soul has chosen the void over the unbearable weight of continuing. News travels fast through Petersburg's networks of gossip and rumor. By midday, Raskolnikov knows. The man who shared his darkness has chosen extinction, another path through guilt, but not his path. That evening, Raskolnikov visits his mother for what he knows will be the last time. She welcomes him with the same blind, adoring love that cannot see what he has become. Something is different about her boy tonight. She can feel it without naming it. His eyes linger on her face as if memorizing it. His embrace holds too long. Her heart quickens with formless dread. Without explanation, he kneels before her and kisses her feet. She gasps, pulls at his shoulders, begging him to tell her what's wrong. He cannot speak. He only weeps and kisses her hands. She blesses him, not knowing why. Her hands trace the sign of the cross over his bowed head. Whatever he has done, whatever he will do, she gives him the only protection a mother can. He walks through Petersburg one last time as a free man. The streets he has known since childhood. The canals, the bridges, the yellow buildings crumbling in the summer heat that has returned. At the Haymarket, he stops. The crowds swirl around him. Vendors crying their wares, drunks arguing, children darting between adult legs. The human soup of poverty and survival that he once thought himself above. He remembers Sonia's words. Go to the crossroads, bow down, kiss the earth you have defiled with your crime. Then bow to the whole world and say aloud, I am a murderer. He kneels on the dirty cobblestones of the Haymarket, presses his lips to the ground. The crowd parts in confusion. Some laugh at the madman, others cross themselves and hurry past. Something shifts in him. The pride that has sealed him away from humanity cracks open. The earth he kisses does not reject him. The world he had tried to rise above receives his surrender. He rises and walks to Sonia's room. She is waiting. She has been waiting for days, perhaps weeks, knowing this moment would come. Her door opens before he knocks. She takes a small cypress, wood cross from around her neck and places it over his head. The cross of suffering. The cross of the thieves who died beside Christ. He accepts its weight. They kneel together in her small room. Neither speaks. Words are insufficient for this moment. Two souls who have crossed into darkness now face the light together, terrified and trembling. I will follow you, she says finally. Wherever they send you. To Siberia, to the ends of the earth. I will not leave you alone. Her voice holds no doubt, no hesitation. The walk to the police station seems to last forever. Each step is a choice reaffirmed. His feet know the way, the same route he took when summoned for unpaid rent, when the nightmare began. He passes the crossroads where she told him to kneel. Passes the corner where strangers might have witnessed. Each landmark a station on this final pilgrimage toward confession and consequence. The police station rises before him. Ordinary brick and stone. Government offices where bureaucrats process crimes and criminals with paper and ink. Inside, everything ends. Inside, everything might begin. At the top of the steps, his nerve falters. His hand freezes on the door. Everything in him screams to turn back, to run, to preserve whatever shreds of freedom remain. He looks back. Across the street, barely visible in the shadows, Sonia stands watching. Her face is pale but steady. She has followed him this far. Her faith carries him forward. Inside, the station is busy with ordinary chaos. Clerks shuffling papers. Officers arguing about schedules. No one pays attention to the thin young man, who enters with doom in his eyes. A clerk mentions casually that they've just received word. Some gentleman named Svidrigailov shot himself this morning near the waterfront. Raskolnikov's alternate ending, the path he didn't take, confirmed and closed. The news almost gives him an excuse. He could leave now. Grieve this stranger's death. No one knows why he came. But Sonia's face remains in his mind, steady and waiting. He sees her again, not physically, but in his mind. Her eyes holding his. The cross she placed around his neck burns against his chest. Her faith in his capacity for salvation. He cannot betray it. He approaches the desk. A bored clerk looks up. Yes. Raskolnikov opens his mouth. The words that have been locked inside him for months finally escape. I am the one who killed the old pawnbroker and her sister. Silence spreads through the station like ripples on water. Then chaos. Voices calling for superiors. Hands guiding him to a chair. The machinery of justice finally has its subject firmly in grip. Questions begin. Where are the stolen goods? Under a stone in a courtyard. He tells them. How did he enter the apartment? Through the unlocked door while Lizaveta was away. Every detail surrendered. They find the items exactly where he said. The blood-stained purse. The jewelry. Everything matches. This is not a false confession like the painters. This is the truth, and it can be verified. The trial is efficient. Russian justice has little patience for philosophical defenses. Yes, he killed. Yes, he confessed. His article about extraordinary men is mentioned but dismissed as irrelevant theorizing by a disturbed young man. The sentence 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. Reduced from what it might have been because he confessed voluntarily. Porfiry's advice, in the end, proved practical as well as spiritual. His mother never learns the truth. She falls ill with the shock of his disappearance and dies believing some mistake has been made, that her brilliant boy could never do such things. It is a mercy. Donya marries Razumikin. In the wreckage of her family, this good man's steady love becomes her anchor. They promise to visit Raskolnikov when they can afford the journey to Siberia. Someday, when 8 years feel shorter, Sonia follows him to Siberia as she promised. She finds work in the town near the prison settlement. She visits him whenever allowed. She waits. She prays. She does not waver. The prison is gray and cold. Barracks stretch in rows. Beyond the walls, the steppe rolls toward infinity. Endless grassland under enormous sky. A different world entirely from Petersburg's cramped fever dreams. The first year passes slowly. Raskolnikov keeps to himself. He does his labor without complaint but without connection. His fellow prisoners sense his contempt and return it with suspicion and dislike. He doesn't repent. Not really. In his heart, his theory still seems valid. He failed not because the theory was wrong, but because he wasn't strong enough to be the extraordinary man he imagined. The other prisoners don't know his crime is murder. They see only an educated former gentleman who thinks himself better than common thieves and peasants. In prison, such pride is dangerous. They hate him for it. But they love Sonia. She brings them small kindnesses when she visits. Tobacco, letters written for those who cannot write, a kind word that costs nothing but means everything to exiled men. Spring arrives, and with it illness. Raskolnikov collapses. Fever takes him again as it did after the murder. For weeks he lies in the prison hospital, hovering between life and death. In his delirium, he dreams of a plague. A sickness that infects the mind rather than the body. Those who catch it become convinced that they alone possess truth. Everyone becomes extraordinary in their own eyes. In the dream plague, everyone argues and fights because no one will submit to anyone else's truth. Societies collapse. Families turn on each other. The world ends not with a bang but with infinite argument. Only a few are spared. Humble people chosen to begin the world again. But Raskolnikov cannot see their faces. He cannot reach them. He remains trapped in the plague, even as he watches it destroy everything. He wakes changed. Something has cracked in his certainty. The dream showed him where his thinking leads, not to greatness but to universal destruction. The extraordinary man theory is not just wrong, it is death. Sonia has been ill too. The strain of following him, of living in poverty, of waiting without end. He hears this through the prison networks and feels something unfamiliar, a fear of losing her. The thought of her death terrifies him more than his own punishment. When did she become necessary to him? When did her existence start to matter more than his theories and pride? She recovers. He visits her room in the town, officially to return a book she lent him. She sits by the window, still pale, still weak. He falls to his knees and weeps at her feet. This is the true confession, not the words spoken to police. This, wordless, weeping, finally understanding that she is the most important thing. That love is more real than any theory about extraordinary men. All his philosophy means nothing beside her. The Napoleon he imagined himself means nothing. The theory he killed for is ash. Only this remains real. That she waited, that she believed, that she loves him. Her face shows relief beyond words. She has waited through all of it. His coldness, his pride, his rejection. Knowing this moment would come. Believing when he could not believe in himself. They don't speak of the future. 7 years remain. But something has changed that makes the years feel different. No longer punishment to endure but transformation to undergo. Together. The other prisoners notice the change in him. The contempt is gone. He works alongside them now, talks with them. Treats them as human beings rather than specimens beneath his notice. They begin to accept him. 7 years remain, but they will pass. He knows this now with certainty. And she will be there at the end, waiting as she has waited, believing as she has believed. The sentence is not death, it is transition. Under his pillow lies her Bible. The same one from which she read him the story of Lazarus. The man who lay dead for 4 days before Christ called him back to life. He opens it now. The same passages she read aloud that night in her room. I am the resurrection and the life. The words that seemed distant, then now feel like they were written for him, addressed directly to his specific death and specific hope of rising. Outside the prison walls, spring is transforming Siberia. The frozen rivers crack and flow again. The steppe turns from brown to green. Even here, at the edge of the civilized world, life insists on renewal. From the hilltop where prisoners sometimes walk, you can see forever. The steppe stretches to horizons beyond imagining. Nomads pass in the distance, living as their ancestors lived 1,000 years before. Time operates differently here. Easter arrives, the most sacred day in the Orthodox calendar. Even in the prison settlement, services are held. Candles burn, voices rise in ancient chant. Christ is risen from the dead. Dawn breaks golden over the barracks. A new day, a new season, a new man, perhaps, still wearing the same prison clothes, but carrying different weight inside his chest. Something died. Something is being born. Dostoevsky ends his novel here, at the beginning of Raskolnikov's real journey. The crime is confessed. The punishment is being served. But the resurrection, the true story, will take 7 more years to complete. Those 7 years, Dostoevsky tells us, would make another story. A story of gradual renewal, of learning to live differently, of becoming human in ways that theory never allowed. But that story remains unwritten, left to our imagination. We are given only this, that Raskolnikov will live differently. That love broke through where guilt could not. That suffering, fully accepted, becomes the door to something beyond suffering. Lazarus rose from the dead after 4 days in the tomb. Raskolnikov's rising will take longer. Years of labor and prayer and learning to love. But the movement is the same, from death toward life, from theory toward truth. So the story closes. A young man asked whether murder could be justified by extraordinary purpose. He tested his theory with an axe, and the world answered, not ever, not for any reason. Not because society forbids it, not because God will punish, but because every human being is infinite. The old pawnbroker was not a louse to be crushed. She was a soul irreplaceable, murdered nonetheless. And Lizaveta, innocent, simple, kind Lizaveta. She didn't even figure in the calculation. Collateral damage. Her death proved what theory tried to deny. That violence, once begun, cannot be contained or controlled. Raskolnikov's theory seduced him with logic, extraordinary men, historical necessity, the mathematics of good and evil. But the body knows what the mind denies. His fever was his soul screaming truth. Sonia knew from the start what he took 2 years to learn. That suffering accepted transforms the sufferer. That the cross is not punishment but passage. That love is stronger than any philosophy. The extraordinary man, it turns out, is not the one who transgresses morality. The truly extraordinary are those who love without condition, like Sonia, who followed a murderer into exile because she believed in his soul. Napoleon, that hero Raskolnikov invoked, left millions dead across Europe. His extraordinary achievements were measured in corpses. The theory of the great man, examined closely, is just permission to murder on a larger scale. The pawnbroker was cruel, yes. She exploited desperate people. But cruelty is not a death sentence. The universe does not appoint young students as executioners of the imperfect. Judgment belongs elsewhere. Lizaveta's blood cries out more loudly than any theory can explain away. She was simple, kind, hurt no one. Her death was pure wrong, and it followed inevitably from the logic that made the first death possible. Redemption in this story doesn't mean forgetting. Raskolnikov will carry those deaths forever. The guilt doesn't dissolve in love. It transforms into responsibility. For living better, for earning the life that continues. 7 years of labor lie ahead, not as punishment alone, but as the work of becoming different. Every stone moved, every hole dug, becomes part of building a new self from the ruins of the old. Sonia is his teacher now. Not through lectures or theories, she has none of those. Through presence. Through patience. Through the way she treats every person as worthy of care, especially those who seem least worthy. Svidrigailov faced the same darkness. He too crossed moral boundaries, killed perhaps, certainly destroyed. But he had no Sonia, no faith. No path, except the one that ended at the watchtower with a bullet. The gun versus the cross. 2 responses to unbearable guilt. Svidrigailov chose extinction. Raskolnikov chose suffering. Only one allows the possibility of becoming something else. Something better, something alive. Raskolnikov survives because someone believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. Sonia's faith is the bridge across the abyss that swallowed Svidrigailov. Love, even for the unworthy, is the difference between death and life. His mother loved him too, blindly and completely, until her death. She never knew what he did. But her blessing followed him to Siberia. Her prayers covered him, even when she didn't know what she prayed against. Donia fought for him with fierce sisterly devotion. Stood between him and Luzin. Tried to understand what she couldn't understand. Kept loving even when loving seemed foolish. Sisters carry burdens that brothers never see. And Razumikin, steady, decent, loyal Razumikin. He took care of Raskolnikov through fever, defended him against suspicion. Loved Donia without hope and then with hope. Some souls are simply good. They don't require theories. Surrounded by love, Raskolnikov built a prison of theory. His garret room was the true cell, not Siberia. The ideas that sealed him from human connection were the real punishment, begun long before the crime. The lie of the extraordinary man is that he stands alone. That isolation is strength, that needing others is weakness. Raskolnikov learned otherwise. Connection is not weakness. It is the only thing that allows survival. Remember that garret, 6 paces long, ceiling pressing down, yellow wallpaper peeling. The coffin where theory bred like fever. He will never return to it, but he will remember it always as warning. Theory cut him off from humanity. That was the true crime. Before the axe fell, he had already murdered something in himself. The capacity for simple human feeling. The ability to see others as real. The murder was symptom, not cause. The disease was pride, the belief that one's own reasoning supersedes all bonds, all duties, all loves. Pride is the original sin from which all others flow. Porphyry understood this. Why else would he offer confession as cure rather than threatening punishment as deterrent? He saw that Raskolnikov was dying of spiritual disease, and confession was the only medicine. Suffering is a great thing, Porphyry said. Not because pain is good, but because accepted suffering transforms. The cross only kills if you fight it. Embraced, it becomes passage to something beyond. The dead remain with us now. Marmeladov crushed by carriage, confessing his sins to a stranger in a tavern. Katerina Ivanovna coughing her life out on the cobblestones, pride intact to the end. Petersburg itself was character in this story. The yellow buildings, the canals, the white nights of summer. A city that breeds fever and philosophy, vision and madness. Dostoevsky's city captured forever in these pages. Dostoevsky saw his Russia at a crossroads. The old faith and the new reason fighting for the nation's soul. Raskolnikov was both. The brilliant student and the murderer, the future struggling against itself. The 1860s were turbulent times. Serfs freed, reform promised, young radicals demanding more. The old certainties crumbling while new ones had not yet formed. Into this chaos, Dostoevsky sent his warning. Raskolnikov has typed the dangerous young intellectual who mistakes his own intensity for genius, his own loneliness for superiority, his own suffering for permission to make others suffer. Every generation produces them, but also Raskolnikov as individual, specific and irreplaceable, a soul that erred terribly and found its way back. Dostoevsky loved his sinners too much to let them be merely examples. They are people first. This is why the novel endures, not as cautionary tale or philosophical argument, but as encounter with real souls making real choices under unbearable pressure. We feel with them. We are them, in small ways. Every generation finds itself in these pages. The temptation to place oneself above morality. The seduction of theories that justify what we want to do anyway. The slow disaster when ideas replace people. The answer to Raskolnikov's theory is not another theory. It is Sonia. Her presence, her persistence, her refusal to abandon him even when he gave her every reason to. Love is argument's end. Not philosophy but presence. Not argument but accompaniment. Not being right but being there. This is what saves. Sonia offers no counter-theory to Raskolnikov's system. She offers herself, which is infinitely more. The plot is complete now. Crime committed. Punishment accepted. Resurrection begun. From the sweltering garret in Petersburg to the frozen steppes of Siberia. The arc of one soul traced from death to life. But Dostoevsky leaves us at the beginning of the real story. 7 years of transformation remain unwritten. We must imagine Raskolnikov learning to be human. That imagining is our work, not the author's gift. Faith tells us it happens. That the dead can rise. That the lost can be found. That even murderers can become something else, something better. Crime and punishment is that faith made narrative. We've seen the crack appear in Raskolnikov's sealed heart. We've watched love break through theory. That is enough. The rest unfolds in the imagination, and, perhaps, in our own lives when we face similar moments. From murder to mourning. From theory to truth. From isolation to love. The full journey of the soul when it goes wrong and finds its way back. This is crime and punishment. This is the whole dark, beautiful story. Now let's step outside the story. Who was the man who wrote these pages? Who understood guilt and redemption so deeply that his novel still speaks to us over 150 years later? Moscow, 1821. A hospital for the poor, where a military doctor named Mikhail Dostoevsky works among the suffering. His second son is born there, amid illness and death. They name him Fyodor. The boy grows up surrounded by the sick and dying. His earliest memories are of fever wards and consumption coughs. Human suffering is not abstract to him. It breathes in the next bed. His mother Maria reads him stories from the Bible. The parables, the miracles, the resurrection of Lazarus. These narratives sink deep into the boy's imagination, rooting there, waiting to bloom decades later in his fiction. When Fyodor is 15, his mother dies of consumption, the same disease that will kill Katerina Ivanovna in his novel. The first great loss. The boy who understood suffering now knows it from inside. His father grows harsh and bitter, drinks heavily, retreats to a country estate where he tyrannizes the serfs. 2 years after Maria's death, those serfs murder him. Some say they suffocated him with a pillow. Orphaned at 17, Fyodor enters the Military Engineering Academy in Petersburg. His mind is made for literature, not fortifications. He reads smuggled novels under his blankets by candlelight, dreaming of another life. Pushkin, Gogol, Balzac, Dickens. He devours them all. Something stirs in him, a conviction that he too can do this, that the suffering he has witnessed demands expression, that he was born to write. His first novel, Poor Folk, appears in 1845. He is 24. The critics are astonished. A new Gogol has appeared, they announce. Overnight, the unknown engineer becomes a literary sensation. Success draws him into radical circles. Young intellectuals gather in secret to discuss forbidden ideas, socialism, reform, revolution. They read banned books aloud. They dream of changing Russia from the ground up. The Petrushevsky Circle, they call themselves. They aren't terrorists or bomb throwers, just talkers, dreamers, readers. But in Tsar Nicholas's Russia, even talk is treason. The secret police are watching, always watching. April 23, 1849. 4 in the morning. Soldiers pound on Dostoevsky's door. He is arrested, thrown into the Peter and Paul fortress, charged with conspiracy against the state. He is 27 years old. 8 months in solitary confinement. A cell in the fortress. No trial date, no visitors, no certainty about anything. He reads the Bible, the only book allowed, over and over until its words become part of him. December 22, 1849. The prisoners are led to Semyonovsky Square. A scaffold has been built. Firing squads stand at attention. This is not a trial. This is an execution. Dostoevsky and his comrades are dressed in white death shrouds. A priest offers last rites. The first 3 men are tied to posts. The rifles rise. This is the moment. This is death arriving. The drums roll. The command to fire is about to be given. And then, a messenger gallops into the square, a white flag. Reprieve from the Tsar. The execution was theater, designed to terrify. It worked. The sentence is commuted to hard labor in Siberia. Dostoevsky has faced death. Truly, absolutely faced it, and survived. He will never be the same. Nothing he writes afterward will be unmarked by this moment. This is the experience that burns through all his later work. Raskolnikov's fever. Svidrigaïlov's nightmares. The sense that consciousness can expand to contain unbearable extremity. He learned this standing before the rifles. 4 years in a Siberian prison. The katorga at Omsk. 10-pound leg irons. Murderers and thieves for companions. No books allowed except the Bible, which he reads until its pages fall apart in his hands. That worn New Testament becomes his lifeline. The Lazarus story, the Sermon on the Mount, the parables of the prodigal son and the lost sheep. Faith crystallizes in the crucible of punishment. His fellow prisoners become his teachers. Peasant murderers who weep at icons. Brutal men capable of unexpected tenderness. He learns that the human soul is not simple, that even the worst contain mysteries. Before Siberia, he believed in perfectibility through reason. After Siberia, he knows better. Human beings are not problems to be solved. They are mysteries to be encountered. Souls capable of anything, good or evil. Released in 1854, he must serve 5 more years as a common soldier in a Siberian regiment. Military discipline, frontier hardship, epileptic seizures that grow more frequent. His body is being broken while his mind sharpens. His first marriage to Maria Iseva, a widow he loves desperately, brings little happiness. She is ill, difficult, dying slowly. He nurses her while struggling to write, to remake himself as an author after the lost decade. Finally, in 1859, permission comes to return to Petersburg. 10 years after his arrest, he re-enters the city that made and nearly destroyed him. He is 38. with everything still to write. Russia has changed while he was gone. A new generation of radicals has emerged, the nihilists they call themselves. They reject all authority, all tradition, all inherited values. They believe only in reason and utility, in destruction of the old. He sees himself in them, the arrogance, the certainty, the willingness to sacrifice real people for abstract principles. But he has been to Siberia. He knows where such thinking leads. He must warn them somehow. The novel begins to form in his mind. A murderer who kills on principle. A student who believes himself extraordinary. The theory of the great man tested against the reality of blood and guilt. But first, disaster. Gambling. The addiction seizes him at German casinos, roulette, the spinning wheel. The desperate conviction that the next bet will restore everything. He loses everything, again and again and again. He writes to pay gambling debts, writes to survive, writes with creditors pounding at his door. The pressure is crushing. But somehow under this weight, genius flows. Crime and punishment emerges chapter by chapter. 1866. The Russian Messenger magazine begins serializing the novel. Readers are gripped from the first installment. This is something new, a journey into a murderer's consciousness, unsparing and strangely compassionate. The monthly installments keep readers in suspense. Will Raskolnikov confess? What will happen to Sonia? Critics debate the morality of following a murderer so sympathetically. Dostoevsky has touched a nerve. He needs help to meet his deadlines. Hires a young stenographer named Anna Snikina. She takes dictation efficiently, calmly, as he paces and speaks the final chapters. She is 20, he is 45. Within months, they are married. Anna becomes his anchor, managing his debts, limiting his gambling, protecting his working time. She is the Sonia to his Raskolnikov, saving him through steady, unwavering devotion. Anna handles everything practical so he can write. She manages creditors, arranges publications, creates order from his chaos. For 15 years, until his death, she makes his impossible life possible. The Russia of the 1860s serfs freed in 1861, but freedom brings new problems. Millions suddenly landless, rootless, flooding into cities. The old order crumbling, the new order not yet formed. Turgenev's novel Fathers and Sons appeared in 1860, introducing the word nihilist to Russian culture. The character Bazarov became a symbol, the young man who believes in nothing except what can be cut with a scalpel. Young radicals across Russia embraced the nihilist label. Burn everything down, trust only science. Reject sentiment, tradition, religion, all the inherited lies. Build a new world from pure reason on the ashes of the old. Raskolnikov takes this thinking to its logical end. If God is dead and everything is permitted, why not murder? If extraordinary men make their own rules, why not become extraordinary through transgression? The theory, followed honestly, leads to blood. But Dostoevsky doesn't simply condemn. He was once a young radical himself. He knows the sincerity of those who want to burn the world and rebuild it better. That's what makes his critique so devastating. He had been that young man with dangerous ideas, had faced death for them, had learned in Siberia that the peasants he hoped to save contained wisdom the intellectuals lacked. The novel is partly confession. Raskolnikov's redemption is Dostoevsky's hope for the nihilists of his time. Turn back, there is another way. Suffering accepted transforms. Faith remains possible even after the worst. Don't choose Svidrigaïlov's bullet. Petersburg itself is crucial to understanding. Peter the Great built it on bones. A western city imposed on Russian marshland. Thousands of serfs died draining the swamps. The city is founded on suffering and contradiction. An artificial capital, neither Russian nor European. Grand facades hiding slums. Reason and order imposed on chaos and mystery. Petersburg became symbol for Dostoevsky. The Enlightenment experiment and its human cost. The summer heat of the novel is not accidental. White nights, when the sun barely sets, when midnight glows like dusk. In this endless twilight, madness breeds. The boundaries between dream and waking dissolve. Raskolnikov's garret exists in this fever city. the yellow buildings, the dust, the stench of canals in summer. Dostoevsky knew these streets intimately. He walked them while writing, absorbing their atmosphere into his pages. Specific locations can still be traced. The building that inspired Raskolnikov's garret. The corner where the pawnbroker might have lived. Petersburg preserves its Dostoevsky geography like a literary crime scene, never quite cleaning up the evidence. The psychology was revolutionary. Before Dostoevsky, novels typically stayed outside their characters, describing behavior, reporting speech. He went inside. We experience Raskolnikov's thoughts as they occur, chaotic and contradictory, and terrifyingly real. Stream of consciousness, critics would later call it. Joyce and Woolf would develop it further. But Dostoevsky pioneered the territory. Mapping the mind's uncharted spaces, the contradictions we hide even from ourselves. Freud read Dostoevsky with astonished recognition. Here was someone who had been there first. Into the unconscious, into the logic of dreams, into the strange ways guilt demands punishment and punishment becomes desired. The criminal psychology in particular anticipated modern understanding. Raskolnikov's compulsion to return to the crime scene. His near confessions to strangers. The way guilt sabotages the guilty. Porphyry knows these patterns before they have names. Porphyry never threatens, never tortures. He simply talks, probing, suggesting, planting seeds of doubt. Modern interrogation techniques would recognize his method, building rapport, encouraging confession, making surrender feel like relief. The criminal needs punishment more than society needs to punish. Dostoevsky suggests. Confession isn't defeat, it's liberation. The burden of hidden guilt crushes more surely than any official sentence ever could. This insight shaped detective fiction to come. The psychological thriller, the cat and mouse game between investigator and perpetrator. The confession as climax. Dostoevsky invented the genre's essential grammar. But he never reduces to formula. Porphyry catches his criminal, but the real victory belongs to Sonia. Detection finds the guilty, faith redeems them. The mystery story becomes religious drama without losing its suspense. The theological argument runs beneath the thriller surface. Can man live without God? The nihilists say yes. Raskolnikov's experiment tests the proposition. His collapse is Dostoevsky's answer: no, we cannot. Not because God punishes from outside, but because without the sacred, human beings lose their grounding. Everything becomes permitted, and everything permitted leads to hell. The extraordinary man becomes extraordinarily alone. Sonia's faith is not intellectual. She cannot argue philosophy. But she can love without condition, suffer without despair, believe when belief seems absurd. This, Dostoevsky suggests, is stronger than any theory. Russian Orthodox Christianity shapes everything in the novel. The emphasis on suffering as transformative. The kenosis, divine self-emptying, echoed in Sonia's sacrifice. The resurrection hope that underlies even the darkest scenes. The West received the novel immediately. Translations into French, German, English followed quickly. Here was Russia's soul on display, dark, intense, spiritual in ways that sophisticated Europe had forgotten to be. Nietzsche read Dostoevsky with fascination and horror. The philosopher of the Superman found his shadow here. But drawn by someone who warned against the consequences, Nietzsche would celebrate. Two brilliant minds, opposing conclusions. Nietzsche saw the extraordinary man and said yes. Dostoevsky saw the same figure and said, look where this leads. Look at the isolation, the guilt, the madness. Is this truly what you want to become? The 20th century would test both visions. Men arose who believed themselves extraordinary. Lenin, Stalin, Hitler. They stepped over millions in pursuit of their ideas. Dostoevsky's warning proved prophetic. Hannah Arendt, writing about the banality of evil, essentially rediscovered what Dostoevsky knew, that ideology makes murder administrative. That theory permits what conscience forbids, that the worst crimes feel ordinary to those who commit them. Camus's The Stranger echoes Raskolnikov. Another murderer without apparent motive, another examination of what happens when traditional meaning dissolves. But Camus finds no Sonia. His universe remains absurd, unredeemed, alone. Every generation rereads the novel and finds new relevance. The alienated young man, the seductive theory, the catastrophic action, the long road back to humanity. These patterns repeat endlessly in history and in human hearts. Film adaptations have tried to capture it. Joseph von Sternberg in 1935. Peter Lorre's haunted face nearly achieving Raskolnikov's fever, but the interior monologue resists cinema. The novel keeps its secrets. More recent echoes appear in unexpected places. Woody Allen's Match Point, a lucky murderer unpunished, challenging Dostoevsky's faith that conscience will out. What if guilt doesn't seek punishment? The dialogue continues. Breaking Bad gave us Walter White, another man who convinces himself he's extraordinary, who transgresses to prove his theory, who descends step by step into hell while believing himself the hero of his own story. The talented Mr. Ripley, another charming sociopath, another murderer who almost gets away with it. Patricia Highsmith admired Dostoevsky. Her criminal air lacks remorse, but not the Russian psychological acuity. These hairs show the archetype's power, the intelligent killer, the theory that justifies, the unexpected consequences. We keep retelling Raskolnikov's story because we keep meeting versions of him in ourselves and in the news. The question never goes away: what are we capable of? Under enough pressure, with the right justification, could any of us cross the line? Dostoevsky's answer: yes. And that's why we need faith, community, love. And the second question follows: can we come back? After the worst, is redemption possible? This is the hope that haunts us. That change is real. That the past does not determine the future absolutely. Dostoevsky himself died at the peak of his powers, January 1881, 60 years old. He had just finished The Brothers Karamazov, his masterpiece, his summa, his final statement on everything that mattered. A lung hemorrhage took him in the night. Anna held his hand. Remember, Anna? I have always loved you, and I have never been unfaithful to you. Then, silence. 30,000 people attended his funeral. Russia mourned its conscience, its prophet, its unflinching witness to the soul's darkness and its capacity for light. He was buried in Petersburg, the city of his triumphs and torments. His reputation only grew after death. The 20th century claimed him as prophet. Every war, every atrocity, seemed to prove his warnings right. The novels found new readers in every generation who recognized themselves. Tolstoy, his great rival, said Dostoevsky was the only psychologist from whom I have something to learn. High praise from a master. They disagreed about much, but recognized each other's genius. The critic Mikhail Bakhtin discovered new depths in the novels. The polyphonic technique, multiple voices arguing without the author resolving their disputes. Dostoevsky let his characters think freely, even when he disagreed with them. Raskolnikov's theory gets full voice in the novel. It sounds convincing. That's the danger. Dostoevsky doesn't strawman his villains. He lets the devil speak his best case before proving him wrong. Fair combat, not propaganda. This honesty makes the faith stronger. When Sonia's silent love defeats Raskolnikov's eloquent theory, the victory feels earned. We've heard the best arguments for transgression. We've seen them fail against simple presence. Today's readers find strange new relevance. Online radicalization follows Raskolnikov's pattern. Isolation breeding theory, theory breeding contempt, contempt breeding violence. The garret room now has Wi-Fi, but the dynamic is identical. The cure remains the same too. Connection. Community. Someone who sees through the theory to the suffering beneath and refuses to abandon the sufferer. Sonia's role is as necessary now as then. Crime and punishment endures because it tells the truth. Not comfortable truth, not flattering truth, but the truth that sets free by revealing what we'd rather not see about ourselves and what remains possible despite it. The novel waits in libraries and bookstores and digital files. Waits for each new reader who needs it. Some come at 20 full of theories. Some come later, haunted by their own past transgressions. All find something. The thriller surface is gripping. The psychology is revelatory. The spiritual depths are inexhaustible. Crime and Punishment meets readers wherever they are and offers what they need. Perhaps you'll read it yourself someday. All those pages, all that Russian complexity, all those names and patronymics. It's not an easy book, but it rewards difficulty with insight nothing else provides. Or perhaps this telling is enough for now. The shape of the story, the sound of the names, the feeling of the journey from murder to morning, that stays with you too in its own way. Dostoevsky would understand. He wrote for readers and listeners alike. The serfs who heard his books read aloud at country estates. The prisoners who passed torn chapters hand to hand. Story transcends format. What matters is that you've traveled with Raskolnikov tonight. From his garret to his Siberia. Through guilt and confession to the beginning of new life. The journey is yours now, carry it gently. So here we are at the end of our journey. A young man in a sweltering room conceived a terrible idea and tested it with an axe. The world answered with blood and suffering. He thought himself extraordinary, above the common herd, permitted to transgress where ordinary men must obey. Napoleon in a threadbare student coat, dreaming of greatness through murder. The pawnbroker died. And Lizaveta too, innocent, unplanned, the proof that violence cannot be contained or calculated. Blood spread across the floorboards, and his soul began its long descent into fever. But hell is not forever. That's the miracle the story offers. Not that we cannot fall. We can, we do, we will. But that falling is not the final word. Rising remains possible. Raskolnikov's journey was toward that possibility. Through guilt and paranoia and confession. Through punishment accepted rather than fought. Toward the moment when love could finally break through the prison of theory. Porfiry pushed him toward that breakthrough. The detective who wanted his criminal saved, not merely caught. Strange mercy from an unlikely source. The hunter who cared about the soul of his prey. And Sonia pulled him. With patience that never wavered, with faith that survived every test, with love that asked nothing except that he become capable of receiving it. She waited, she believed, she stayed. Love broke through where argument could not. Not philosophy but presence. Not being right but being there. This is what saves, in Dostoevsky's vision, in life itself perhaps, the simple fact of not being abandoned. Dostoevsky knew what he was writing. He had stood before firing rifles himself, had descended into Siberian hell and emerged somehow still capable of faith. His novel is testimony, not just story. 4 years in prison among murderers taught him that souls are not simple. That the worst contain unexpected good. That redemption refuses to exclude anyone willing to suffer for it. He learned this in chains. He wrote not to lecture but to share. One soul who had been to the edge speaking to other souls who might be headed there. The novel is a hand extended across the abyss. Perhaps that's why the story still works, after all these years. It doesn't moralize from above. It bleeds on the page alongside us. We feel what Raskolnikov feels because Dostoevsky felt it first. We recognize ourselves in the murderer. The capacity for wrong, the seduction of self, justification, the loneliness of pride. This recognition is uncomfortable but necessary. The first step toward not becoming what we fear. And we're grateful for Sonia. Because we need her too. Someone who sees through our worst and refuses to turn away. Someone whose faith creates the space for our own transformation. That's the story. All of it. Crime and punishment and the fragile hope of resurrection. A young man's fall and the love that catches him at the bottom. Darkness that finally admits light. Now the story settles into you. Like dust after long travel, like snow after storm. The characters take their places in your imagination, ready to rise again whenever you call them. Petersburg fades back into history. The yellow buildings, the canals, the Haymarket crowds. That fever city where Raskolnikov walked and murdered and finally confessed. It exists now in words and imagination, immortal. The characters rest now, Sonia with her Bible, reading perhaps the Lazarus story one more time. Raskolnikov beside her learning to pray, learning to live differently, Their story continues beyond the page. The Siberian steppe stretches toward horizons we cannot see. Endless grassland under enormous sky. A different world from the cramped garret where this all began. Space to breathe. Space to become something new. Spring is coming in that distant place. The frozen rivers beginning to crack. Water moving beneath the ice, seeking its way toward sea. Everything that seemed permanent starting to shift and flow again. Let that image stay with you. Ice breaking, water flowing again. Whatever has frozen in you can thaw. Whatever seems permanent can change. That's not empty comfort. That's the testimony of centuries. Dostoevsky believed it. He had to, having survived what he survived, having written what he wrote. The frozen man can thaw. The dead can rise. Lazarus heard his name called and emerged from the tomb. Maybe that feels true for you tonight. Maybe it feels distant, impossible. Either way, the story holds it for you until you need it. Literature keeps truths in trust for us. That's what great novels do. They don't just entertain. Though they do that too. They hold experiences we haven't had yet, feelings we might need someday. They expand what we know to be possible. Dostoevsky survived his execution, survived his prison, survived his epilepsy and his gambling and his grief, and left us this gift, a map of the soul's darkest territories and the paths that lead back out. If you drifted through parts of this telling, that's perfect. That's what this is for. The story will be here whenever you want it, in a library, in memory, in the hum of words half remembered. Maybe you'll read the novel yourself someday. All 600 pages of Russian names and psychological intensity. It's there waiting, patient as Sonia. Ready when you are, no pressure, no assignment. Or maybe this version is enough for now. The shape of the story, the feeling of the journey. That stays with you too, in its own way. Stories have many forms of living. Either way, you've spent an hour with one of humanity's great minds. With a murderer who found his way back. With the woman who waited for him. With the detective who wanted him saved. With Petersburg in summer. With Siberia in spring. With all the suffering and all the hope that Dostoevsky poured into those pages over 150 years ago. Still speaking, still alive. The room around you is quiet now, just as it should be. The story has been told. The characters have done their work. Now comes the part where you rest with what you've received. Somewhere in imagination, it is always dawn over Siberia. The steppe always stretching toward freedom. Raskolnikov and Sonia always sitting by the river. Their story continuing beyond any ending we can write. And you rest here, in your own present moment. The story told, the night embracing. The world outside doing whatever the world does while you sink deeper into comfort and quiet. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift. The Russian names, the Petersburg streets, the theories and confessions. All of it settling now like sediment in still water. Clarity comes from rest. Raskolnikov is at peace now. After everything. The fever, the guilt, the long journey through punishment towards something like grace. He rests too. The character you traveled with tonight has found his shore. And Sonia beside him, her faith rewarded, her patience vindicated. The prostitute who became a saint through suffering and love. She rests too, her work of salvation accomplished. Both of them finally home. Thank you for letting me tell you this tale. For trusting me with an hour of your night. For staying, awake or drifting, while the story unfolded. It has been my privilege to be your guide. Sleep well tonight, and if you dream, let them be dreams of thawing rivers, of dawnlight breaking over frozen places, of hands reaching and finding each other in the dark. We'll meet again, you and I. Another night, another great book. There are so many stories waiting to be told in the dark. But for now, this one is complete. Rest with it. Good night now, rest well. Let the story settle into you like snow, like silence, like peace. The tale is told, the night is yours, sleep. And carry Raskolnikov's hope with you into morning.